I'm easing back soon as it's dark.
Well, that's up to you. There's your share. Make your choice.
A few months ago, I watched and reviewed The Gunfighter from 1950 with Gregory Peck as a cowboy outlaw trying to settle down and make a normal life for himself. And I really enjoyed that film. So while looking through films recently, I found another Gregory Peck Western that caught my attention, Yellow Sky from 1948. It features Gregory Peck as well as Ann Baxter and Richard Widmark. So I found a copy and watched it, and I'm glad that I did. It's a fantastic Western with some great performances and notably some really beautiful cinematography. So I needed to put this one into a review. I'll give an overview of the story and then offer some closing thoughts. Well, the film opens up and Gregory Peck plays the character of Dawson, and he and his gang are riding through a really gloomy stretch of land. Low clouds, rainy, dreary. I have to note up front that the cinematography from this film by Joseph McDonald is just amazing. And more on that later. But Dawson's gang includes legendary actor Richard Widmark as Dude, Robert Arthur as Bull Run, John Russell as Lengthy, and Harry Morgan of MASH fame as Half Pint. I love these names. And Charles Kemper as Walrus. I actually caught Charles Kemper recently in the film Scarlet Street. We can tell right away that these guys are a rough band of ne'er-do-wells. They head into town and go to a local saloon where they seem to be mesmerized by a painting behind the bar. Now Dawson asks if there's a marshal in town, and they get the idea from the local drunk, who they gave a drink to, that there isn't one in town. So they leave and casually hold up a bank and then flee town. But it isn't very long before they're pursued. They're driven to the edge of a desert. Now Dawson is all for crossing it and says, "Make your choice," before proceeding. And the guys maybe look a little bit uncertain, but they decide to go along as well with him. And they make this trip. And let me just say, as you watch this scene, go get yourself a cold glass of water to drink while watching, because it's uncomfortable and long. I mean, we're talking Treasure of Sierra Madre level heat and dryness as these guys make their way across desert salt flats, fighting over the remaining water that they have, giving little scraps of water to their horses and so on. Their lips are all chapped. I mean, it's an uncomfortable scene. But the bandits finally see a small town ahead, and momentarily encouraged, they move on, only to discover it's an abandoned street. Nobody's there. All the buildings are crumbling and decaying. I mean, it's a great-looking ghost town, but realizing that nobody's there, they all just kind of collapse at the entrance of a saloon. Now, shortly after they've arrived, a woman shows up and she's got a rifle aimed at them and tells them about a spring nearby. Now, this is actress Ann Baxter. She's this tough, spunky character. Now, her character's name is Constance, but she also goes by the nickname of Mike through the movie. They make their way to the spring and they finally get their drink after this long trip through the desert. Now, Dawson goes to a nearby house where the girl with the rifle had appeared from, and he just wants to talk to her and get some food for his men and for himself. And he manages to grab the gun away from her, but she slugs him. And at that point, her grandfather appears, actor James Barton, with a gun. But Dawson persists about getting dinner, and Grandpa agrees to it, much to the annoyance of Constance.
You shouldn't have given in to him like that, Grandpa.
I know what I'm doing. Don't feed him. Right away, they begin suspicion. You act as if nothing had happened and leave this to me.
So Dawson warns the other guys, stay away from this house, stay away from Constance, but you can tell these scoundrels are interested because she's a very attractive woman. They bunk out for the night at the old saloon in town. But that night, Dawson goes to see Constance again, and during the meeting, he lunges at her and grapples her to the ground for a kiss. And it's a little bit uncomfortable, actually, wondering where's this scene going, but he just gives her a kiss and moves away. And she's furious, tells him that he stinks, and she walks off, then she turns around and shoots him. And she's apparently a sharpshooter and just manages to graze his head. Grandpa hears the shot and he shows up laughing. Dawson heads back to the spring to wash his head wound.
What were you doing up there?
I was looking for you. I guess you didn't hear what I said about staying away from that girl.
Looks like you didn't even hear it yourself.
So there he talks with Dude, who's convinced there's gold in the area. And I like how Richard Widmark always seems to be playing the creepy, scheming, evil character. He just does that so well. He's got gold on the mind, thinking, this girl and her granddad are out in the middle of nowhere. What are they there for? Well, it has to be gold. Now, even though it seems at this point like Dawson and Dude maybe share something of a mutual respect, I don't think that goes very far. And we'll see what happens with their friendship as the film continues. Well, Dawson cleans up and, sadly, shaves off his beard, and then goes back to Mike's place, but Mike and Grandpa are gone. Instead, there's Duke, and it seems as if he and the guys have joined forces with him, have picked a side and are wanting the gold.
So you fellas figure you got a new boss, eh?
We want that gold.
Dude said you wasn't interested. So he took a vote and...
Decided the Dude's the leader, is that it?
Now, Constance and Grandpa, however, have taken to the hills and opened fire on them. And Dawson comes out with a flag of truce, trying to sweet-talk them about the gold and that they'll cut them in on the deal. But meanwhile, the other guys sneak up behind Grandpa and Constance and ambush them, and in the gunfire exchange, Grandpa's shot in the leg. So the two of them surrender, and back at the house, they gather around to listen to Grandpa talk about the gold. And he'd like to make the deal and asks for half of the gold if he tells him how to get it.
You still haven't said how much you got.
It ain't just the money. Look at him. He's an old man. All he's dreamed about is seeing this town coming to life again. With people living here and working and stores open. The stage coming through from Alkali. And all because of him and what he done.
So the guys are able to locate the entrance of the old mine shaft. It's all kind of crumbled with rock, so they begin digging to get into it. Now, a little bit later, Constance comes to draw water from the spring. That's the one where the guys have just kind of been hanging out. And the character Lengthy grabs at her. But there's a big fight that ensues, and Dalton gets involved and actually holds his head underwater for an uncomfortably long amount of time. I was actually wondering if this was going to be the end of Lengthy, but no, he is spared. But it's another one of those scenes that's just a little bit uncomfortable in this film. So later that night, Dawson goes to see Constance again. He has really fallen for her, and you can see that she's kind of fallen for him as well. And they kiss, but she still doesn't quite trust him. She thinks that, he's not going to keep his word. He's an outlaw. He's going to run off. So at this point, Dawson has to go and talk to them and give his word that he is committed, that they will get their part of the gold before they leave. So Dawson goes in, talks to Grandpa and Constance together, and swears on a Bible that he's going to keep his word. So the next day, the guys are up mining again, and they manage to actually find some gold. But it's at this point they look down from the mountainside and they see a large group of Apache Indians coming into the town.
Looks like that old man wasn't as loony as we figured.
Yeah. Let us dig his gold out for him. Then his Indians show up just when we find it.
Well, Dawson goes down to see Constance and Grandpa, and from outside of their house, looking in the window, he sees Grandpa talking to the Apache chiefs. And later, once they've left, he finds out from Grandpa that he was talking to them peacefully, and that the Apaches were just seeking his help in resolving a problem on the reservation, and that he had agreed to do what he could to help them out. So the next day, Dawson returns to the mine, and he talks to the guys that they need to honor their word and give some of the gold to Grandpa. But they aren't having it. Dude, who is apparently really gold crazy at this point, has convinced the others to refuse any sort of a deal. and Dawson is on his own with this. So they open fire on him, he runs, and at this point, Constance comes to help him out with her gun and is able to bring him back to the ranch house. But what will happen? Will Dude and his band of outlaws get their way, and will they kill Dawson, and will they get the gold? I don't want to give away the ending, but it was epic. So go and check this one out for yourself. There are many copies that I found on YouTube. It may be in the public domain, I'm not really sure, but let me wrap this review up with some closing thoughts. Yellow Sky came out in 1948 and was directed by William Wellman. One of the first things I have to make a note of was how gorgeous this film was. I mean, I was stopping constantly to grab screenshots just to admire the composition. The cinematography was by Joseph McDonald, and this is one of those situations where I may go and track down some of his other films, simply because of how amazing the visuals were in this film. Looking at his catalog, I see he did gritty noir films like Call Northside 777. He also did Panic in the Streets. He also did some Marilyn Monroe films like Niagara and How to Marry a Millionaire, as well as westerns like John Ford's My Darling Clementine. You know, I took several stills of the movie while watching it because the visuals and compositions of shots, it was just so well done. You really felt the heat and the depth of that desert. You saw the amazing details of the mountains and the clouds. Also, I loved how the film utilized the environment to bring your attention to characters or scenes using the angled shapes of the environment. It could be like the rocks of a canyon or the slope of a saloon sign that had fallen to the ground. Yellow Sky frequently left me with a feeling of unease and distrust. While Gregory Peck's Dawson character does seem to eventually go straight near the end of the film, for a lot of the movie, you're not really sure you can trust him or any of his guys. And the scene where he grapples with Constance for that kiss was, frankly, very uncomfortable. Something I noticed that added to the tension of the film is a notable lack of music. You know how in films when there's like a scuffle or a chase or a romance scene, there's generally some kind of music to help tell the narrative, to kind of let you know what's going on. Well, no, that doesn't happen here. There's actually a lack of music through the film. I think they had music at the beginning and at the end, but through a majority of it, there's nothing. And to me, that just felt like that added to the tension and uncertainty of what was going on. And, you know, it's really strange how accustomed to music we are in films, that when it's missing from a scene, you know, you're kind of left feeling like something's not right. Yeah, I mean, usually you watch a film and there's a kiss, and it will have some sweet orchestral strings, and it sort of leads to sappy melodrama, and you know things are okay, but that doesn't happen here. And if anything, back to that forced kiss, without any sort of music, really paints Dawson as a creep, maybe even something darker. I mean, are we supposed to be rooting for him? Or does he have sinister intentions, you know? Really makes you appreciate what music can do for a film. It reminds me of the time I saw parts of the movie Jaws with the music removed. Well, it's a completely different film and really sort of distorts your perceptions and expectations. Same with the scene of the guys as they made their trek through the desert. You know, in a film where you've got a dry and dreary environment, maybe you'd hear some strings and a minor key to paint how hopeless it is. But here, no music. You just kind of watch as they slowly make their way and the horses trip and stumble through those hot sands. I still thought that Gregory Peck was great, even if his character was a little bit more sketchy for most of the film. You do sort of warm up to his Dawson character and that eventual romance with the character of Constance. But it's an awkward trip to get there. I guess once the beard is gone, that's a sign that he's gone good, because only suspicious people have beards. Anne Baxter's character of Constance was a real spunky firecracker. I really loved her character in this film, standing there with a rifle, not putting up with any of this nonsense. I mean, the fact that she almost shot Dawson's head off was really something. And there's sort of a naive innocence to her character as well. You know, like when she goes to the spring to gather water with all of those dubious dudes just sitting around. She's scrappy and tough, but at the same time, if I was in that role, I probably would have waited until the guys had left for town before drawing water, but whatever. Now, her character does eventually warm up to Gregory Peck's character, and there's a little bit of romance there. But to me, it just didn't have the same feel as, say, Peck's relationship with Helen Westcott's character in the film The Gunfighter. That felt a little bit more real to me. With this film, the overriding feeling I really got from the character of Candace is that she just wanted these creeps out of town to leave her and her grandpa alone. And yeah, although yes, things do change eventually near the end of the film, but it never really struck me as genuine. Maybe it goes back to that lack of music again, I don't know. But far too frequently, I just kind of felt like she just was ready to shoot all these guys, Dawson included, just to have them gone. Richard Widmark's character Dude was excellent as the scheming villain who was only really there to get the gold. You know, I'm never disappointed when Richard Widmark shows up in a film, especially when he's playing the main bad guy. And I love how he just kind of keeps things on track as he just wants to get the gold and get out of town with his bad guy friends. And the other characters were good as well. I did like seeing Charles Kemper and Harry Morgan, but to be honest, it feels like a lot of their stories were either too short or just kind of left out, as they spent most of their time just kind of loafing around the spring. Now, my only gripes I could think of watching this film would be that I was wondering how on earth were Constance and Grandpa surviving in this house in the middle of nowhere? I mean, where were they getting food and supplies from? Since apparently no one was anywhere near them, and the only nearest town was a ghost town. I mean, they had fresh water, sure, but were they existing only on the assistance of, say, the Apaches? And speaking of the Apache, if they all rode into town in huge numbers, heavily armed, ready for conflict, you know, if Grandpa was friends with the chiefs, and here were these problematic outlaws from out of town, right there at the mine, trying to take all of his hard-earned gold, why didn't he just say, "Hey, while you're here, could you help me out with a quick favor?" Yeah, a few arrows later, whip, 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 problem solved. And, well, the bad guys would all be gone, but oh well. Also, without giving spoilers, the ending did seem a tad maudlin, at least in light of the rest of the film, but heck, yeah, I'm an old softie, so it's a minor gripe, and I still love the ending anyway. The exterior shots were filmed at the Death Valley National Monument, and the crew actually lived at the Furnace Creek Inn and Camp. From what I've read, that place is still around today. And although briefly used in the film, the opening and closing music was taken from Alfred Newman's score to the film Brigham Young from 1940. But otherwise, as mentioned earlier, there was not much music in this film at all. Yellow Sky was a very enjoyable Western, and Gregory Peck and Ann Baxter were both excellent leads in this movie. And again, I have to point out the beautiful direction and cinematography. You know, in case you had an issue with the plot, well, hey, at the very least, you can enjoy that beautiful, lush, black and white cinematography of Death Valley. It's just captured so well in this film. Yellow Sky was a fantastic Western, and it is worth checking out.